Hey guys, I'm back with another short video for the channel. So today's topic is why I chose a midwife slash home birth for my birth. So yeah, let's get on into why I am having a home birth with this pregnancy, and some of the reasons why I chose home birth versus hospital birth, midwife versus OB. So yeah, so let's get started. So there's basically multiple reasons why I decided to go with a midwife and a home birth compared to having it in the hospital. So with my first pregnancy, I did want to have a water birth, but at the time I was living in Illinois, and they were not very accepting. At the time, the city that I lived in did not have a birthing center, and the hospital will only allow you to labor in the tub, but not actually push your baby out in the tub. And then which is what I opted to do. But when I got to the hospital, they did not inform me that if they broke my water, they would not allow me to labor in the tub anymore at that point. So they broke my water, and in my mind, I was planning to use the water as the last line of defense. So let me start with, I went unmedicated my first labor. I did not have an epidural. And so I had kind of developed these levels of coping mechanisms to help me manage that. And so water was my last line of defense. Water was like, when I can't take this pain no more, I'm gonna get in the water. I'm gonna use all my other coping skills. I'm gonna use my bouncing ball and just, visualization and all this. And when I feel that the pain is too much, I'm gonna use the water to get me through to the end till it's time to push. Well, I'm in labor. I'm in labor for days. At the time I had my daughter, I had been in the hospital for 24 hours laboring, which half of those 24 hours I have been on Pitocin, which is an induction drug used to help intensify contractions and help move things along more quickly, which it didn't do too much for me, just intensify the contractions, made them so much more painful. But yeah, so I'm just moseying along, they're like, oh, if we break your water, it's gonna get going, so they broke my water after I had been in the hospital probably like 5 or 6 hours, and I was still managing pretty good. Around midnight or so, I was getting to the point of, number one, exhaustion, and number two, I was getting to the point where the pain was getting pretty unbearable. That's when they were starting me on the Pitocin, and playa was not dilating as quickly as they expected. And so the pain was getting pretty intense. And so I was just like, okay, I want to get in the water. Well, they had not told me that because they broke my water 5 hours prior, that I would not be able to get in the tub. So I go to them like, hey, I want to get in the water now. Like, I want to labor in the water, because this pain is getting, up there. stuck there. That pain was crazy. So yeah, they're like, oh, no, honey. If we break your water, you cannot labor in the tub because there's risk of infection and, yada, yada, yada. So there I was dying because in my mind, I'm like, okay, when the pain get to this level, this is what I'm going to use to cope. And now that was just snatched away from me. So that was very frustrating. I did not appreciate that. And that was something that I should have been informed of as far as their policies before, especially when I expressed to them that was something that I wanted to do. So there are a lot of things like this that happens very commonly in the hospital. It happens very commonly in the OB office when you're meeting with doctors and stuff. And so I just was not fond of that. Thankfully, I had an amazing OB my first time around, because there's no doubt in my mind that if I had not had the OB that I had, I would have had a C-section, because I was laboring for a very long time. And I was progressing very slowly, but I was never in distress, and my baby was never in distress, which as she did, there was no need for a medical intervention. There was no need for a C-section to be put on the table, which she didn't. There was no need for any type of intervention except just wait, because I was healthy, my baby was healthy. There was no risk with us waiting. So, and we waited, and she came, and I pushed for 2.5 hours, which is also something that I'm sure if I had a different OB, they would have cut her out because it was taking too long. But as I said, while I was pushing, her heart rate never dropped. My heart rate never dropped. Pressure good, everything. We were both healthy. There's no need to intervene. So, number one, hospital practices. Just the lack of the fact that they don't inform you or leave out things that later on come up. Also, COVID was a big one. That's one of the reasons why I opted into a home birth versus a hospital birth, because many hospitals have put lots of restrictions on for birthing. There's a very strict one person policy, so I will only be able to have one person, which would obviously be the father of my child, and I can't do that. I feel like I need my mama there, and I had a pretty hefty support team the first time, and so I wanted that experience to be the same, because I do not believe I would have gotten through my labor and delivery had I not had the support team that I had. Shout out to them, because they were amazing. They were bomb. They kept my spirits up. They helped soothe me, helped comfort me, and helped get me through that unbearable pain that I bared. So yes, hospital policies, that's a big one to why I chose to have a hospital birth. Number two, and these are in no particular order. They are equally important to me, and they are equally weighted in my decision-making process. So yeah. So I also chose to have a home birth versus a home birth versus a hospital birth, because of, just Black maternal death rates. We're dying, in childbirth. We are dying at significantly higher rates, and we are dying because we have providers that are not listening to us, that are not being receptive to what we're telling them is something's wrong. They're not checking, they're not believing, they're not listening. And that's very important to me, that my provider be able to listen to me and meet my needs and be educated on me as a Black woman, the risks associated with childbirth, labor, and delivery. And that one is probably the biggest thing to why I chose a midwife versus an OB. And there are some amazing OBs out there. There are great OBs that do listen to you, but I'm in a new state, and I don't have time to be switching from OB to OB, trying to differentiate. I do not know enough people to be recommended to, where I felt comfortable being recommended to an OB. Comparative to midwives, OBs do a lot more intervention, a lot more medical intervention, and I didn't want a lot of medical intervention. So I went with a midwife. Speaking into that, we'll go on into medical intervention. I wanted something that was more holistic, something that was had a provider that had a more natural stance on labor, delivery, and pregnancy. Our medical system tends to not operate from a holistic point of view. They tend to offer, medications and supplements more frequently compared to midwives. I wanted something that was more holistic, that would offer more natural remedies to help with pregnancy, labor, childbirth. I wanted to catch my own baby. I wanted to stand while I was birthing. I wanted to be in water. These are things that many OBs do not support. And so I had to find something that supported what I wanted my labor and childbirth to look like. So that's what I did. Another thing that pushed me toward, let's see, those were really the big things. And I have not regretted my decision since I've done it. I am now in my 8th month, and I absolutely love my midwife. I couldn't have chosen a better midwife. Shout out to Deshawn, my good friend and fellow birth doula at Harmonious Birthing too. She recommended Frances Coleman Jones. Check her out. She's a midwife in Houston if anybody is looking for a midwife. And she is super dope, super bomb, very personable. And it's just the level of care. It's the level of attention. It's the level of responsiveness. During my first pregnancy, when I would go in to see my OB, I would go to my appointment. I would wait probably about 30 minutes in the lobby, just chilling, waiting on to be seen. And then I would, probably see a sonographer if it was an appointment that I needed a sonogram. Go back in the lobby, wait for, another 15 minutes or so probably. And then I would go in and see my OB. And the whole appointment, the actual physical contact with my OB would be about 15 minutes, literally. I'm in the room with this provider, with this doctor who's supposed to give me a level of care for 15 minutes. Like, it's impossible for me to get across everything that's going on with me. And to me, for you to be able to actively assess what is going on in my situation, if you're only seeing me for 15 minutes, like, I would see the nurse longer than I would see the OB. So that was something that is totally different with a midwife. My midwife literally spends, an hour or more at every appointment. It's direct contact. It's me talking to her. It's me telling her my symptoms. It's me telling her how I'm feeling. And just this interaction, she's able to look and physically see, what I'm describing. And it's just a much more attentive level of care compared to a OB. And that's no fault of OBs. They're overworked. Like, they have tremendous number of patients that they see. And like I said, my OB, she was bomb, but I saw her for 15 minutes every visit. Like, that's not long enough for me to feel comfortable. I wanted something that was more personable. Also, I can call my midwife directly. I can send my midwife a message and say, hey, this is going on, what do you think? I can't do that. I couldn't do that with the OB provider. I would have to call the nurse line, speak to a nurse, or call the hospital, speak to a nurse or a third party that knows nothing about me, my care, my situation, and what I have been going through with this pregnancy thus far, to be able to adequately judge what to do next. I may hear from my OB the next day or in a couple days, or if it's not emergent, maybe not at all. A nurse probably is going to call me back. Like, I probably am never going to make contact with my actual provider, the person who's actually going to be delivering my baby. That's another thing. When I had my baby, the OB really was only in there for the pushing part. The rest was a care team that I had never seen prior to me being admitted to the hospital. These are not the nurses that I've been seeing at my practice. These are nurses that are at the hospital that I've never had any type of interaction with prior to me checking into the hospital. That's fine. It works, but that's not what I wanted. I wanted somebody who knew me as a patient, knew my situation, knew my baby and what my baby is like as far as like risk and assessing me as a patient. So with midwife, it's a totally different level of care. And so those are the reasons why I chose a midwife versus an OB and chose a home birth over a hospital birth. So if you have any questions, please drop them below in the comment section. Please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel at Brown Girl Birthing. And don't forget, if you want to keep up with me, follow me on Instagram, Facebook at Brown Girl Birthing. And then if you want to book services, car seat education, car seat installation, breastfeeding support, breastfeeding information or education, as well as doula services, you can do all of those things at browngirlbirthing.com. And just stay tuned for more videos about this pregnancy journey. My next video, I'll have information about my first pregnancy compared to my second pregnancy, and the differences that I've noticed, as well as, and there's a lot at this point. Before it was like a little bit more similar, but like now that I'm at the end, it's a lot. Even just with this whole getting ready for baby to come. So yeah, tune in for that, as well as I'll have other topics related to this pregnancy and how it's going, and preparing for a home birth. So yeah, don't forget to tap the subscribe button so you know when my videos drop. Thank you.